Hello, 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 and welcome to the Blue Oval Podcast. I am Ben Weissland. Joining me, as always, Garrett Silan. How's it going, man?
Ben, I don't know how else to put it, but these last few days have kicked me in the ass. I don't know how else to say that. Everyone knows, obviously, this is a crazy past weekend, probably the biggest regular season weekend of the year. So, but hey, that's my job. I signed up for that. I love it. Cool, no problem. And then I get sick, and it wasn't fun. But I was like, you know what? We'll power through it. It could be worse. There's crazier weekends to get sick. And then I lost my wallet and I tore apart my entire apartment. Asked my favorite people at the coffee shop, "Hey, did I leave my wallet here yesterday?" Like, nope, haven't seen it. And I eventually found it, but it's just been like, I think, God testing me for these last couple days here.
Well, yeah. I mean, hey, we all have those weeks. I think I've expressed some of those weeks
Yes, you have.
in the months prior, so I totally get it. And thankfully, you had a lot of good track to take a look at because, man, this like you said, very busy weekend. A ton of great performances, so much so that performances that we would have led the show with a year ago, we are going to maybe touch on very briefly because there are just so many fast performances happening week over week. I know you mentioned in your First Thoughts article about we thought most of this was due to the shoes, but at this point the shoes have happened and
Yep.
it is I'm sure they're still getting slightly better. But whether you look at collegiate performances, you look at what Grant Fisher has done
Mm-hmm.
over the past 10 days, and something is happening. And I don't know what it is, but everybody is getting way, way quicker.
Yeah, it's exhausting. And shout out to Lauren Colley, who we just brought on to do some of our social media work. Like, she's been a godsend. I'm like, you mean I don't always have to be at my desk every weekend to ensure that we're posting stuff? So she was super super helpful this past weekend, and I'm happy to that. We also got a few freelancers out there in Boston. Ben, I was also happy that we moved up on the Spotify ratings and reviews. I think we're up to 190. Is that correct?
Yeah, 10 away from 200. Pretty exciting there.
Yeah, except Apple, you're lacking again. I don't know what we need to do to incentivize reviews on Apple, but otherwise, ratings and reviews there. Go leave a subscription on YouTube. Ben, we have no time to waste. Let's get into it.
Let's get into it, and we're going to start with what was, I think, the craziest event out of this entire weekend, and that was the women's mile, headlined by Silan Ayyildiz NCAA record performance of 4:23, breaking Caitlin Tuohy's record of 4:24 from a couple years back. We saw a lot of women go under 4:30 this week. So if you went under 4:30 this week and we don't really talk about you, I'm sorry. There was just a lot to get to. We saw Melissa Riggins, Margot Appleton run 4:25, and then we saw three other women run 4:26. Lorena Rango, Beatrice Bethany Morley, and Vera
Sojberg?
Sjosberg. There you go. Yeah, I'm not good with those Nordic names. But yeah, just an absolutely incredible weekend. Ayyildiz going up against some pros and being dragged along and just hanging tough to an NCAA record performance.
And the craziest part is that you left out Mia Barnett running 4:28 in the second
Yeah,
heat, and Grace Hartman
Hartman.
soloing
Yeah.
a 4:24 mile. That's now NCAA number 3 all time in the third heat. And oh, by the way, she ran 8:46 in the 3K at the Eagle Elite Invite that night before. So maybe the most impressive performer of the entire weekend. There's an argument to be said. Um,
Yeah.
Thoughts when not only just what was your reaction when not only that you saw Ayyildiz ran 4:23, but that you had 8 collegiate women at one meet run under 4:30, and then 13 total for the weekend running under 4:30.
I was sad that I went over, I think, on our over and unders. That was my first reaction. But the second was, I think, Ayildiz's record, if you looked at that in a vacuum, I think you would be like, oh my goodness, this is incredible. Like, she's going to be the NCAA favorite. And I think I was mentioning this last week about I don't really feel super confident in saying there's a true favorite in this women's mile field because I was just like I think everybody's just running really fast right now. It's hard to tell. And I felt like this weekend really backed that up, right? Ayyildiz, great performance, but you have so many women within a couple seconds of her. And some of them are women that you would expect, right? Like Riggins, Appleton, like they've been at the top of the NCAA before. For them to run this fast is kind of crazy. But like if someone was going to do it, you could put them in that conversation. But the three women behind them who ran the 426 and Hartman running the 424, I mean, Hartman's great, but we haven't seen anything that would say she's got this kind of wheels. That's where you're like, oh, the NCAA has just taken a huge step forward, and running 425 is no longer being like, oh yeah, you're going to be an All-American. Like there's no guarantee of being an All-American, which is scary. And Ayyildiz's NCAA record of 423 doesn't mean that she's the favorite either. Like that's where we're at. And I think it's just such a loaded, congested field. Those prelims are going to be absolutely terrible to get through because it is going to be one of the more loaded fields we have seen in NCAA history. When you look at like the performance list and you compare it to the NCAA record book, like those are going to be fairly equivalent as you go 1 through 16. So yeah, I was surprised to see Ayyildiz to wrap this up. Ayyildiz's performance of 423, but then you look at the other performances and you're like, oh, hers makes more sense, but theirs is almost more surprising that we just saw the depth of the mile field improve so dramatically.
You really just struck a nerve with me when you said 425 milers are not guaranteed to be All-Americans. And I'm like, what? Like, even okay, fine. Even if we say that it's not 425, but it's like 426s, like I feel very, very, very confident in saying at least one of those 426 milers will not be an All-American, which is an unreal sentence to say. I don't know where this is coming from. Right, like it's not like this is like an overly like an overbearing international presence. It's not like all these women are 28 plus, right? It's all within reason, right? And it's not anything that we haven't seen before in terms of the demographic. So I'm struggling to figure out how we saw this, and I'm with you. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I don't know if maybe you and I will pick Ayyildiz to win the national title. I don't know if we will. I still might do it, but I think when you really kind of take this in like a more macro sense, who can you really take at this point? And at a last chance meet, I'm not confident that the record could still stand.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I mean, there's 6 women who have run 425 or faster, and we came in to this weekend being like, all right, Nielsen's run the second fastest time. She's run 425 twice. Like she feels like she's really elevated above most of the NCAA, and then she sees 4 women run significantly. I mean, to varying degrees of significantly faster than her. And yeah, I don't think this is over, right? I think we're going to see more women run at least 425. And I think someone could scare the record if it's what they want to try to go out and do. Yeah, there really is. I mean, you're thinking about the tracks are the same. Like it's the same kind of like they're racing against pros. Like the races are being set up the same. The shoes are the same. It's just, I don't know if it's the training, if it's whatever it is, a cumulative effect of probably a lot of different things. We are just seeing this explosion in a time where, like you said, it's not like eligibility. Like these athletes are surviving on COVID eligibility for the most part anymore. Like this is normal, like junior, senior performances that are in their 3rd, 4th, 5th year that are just going out and just rocking the NCAA.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, there's still certain athletes who are, older than maybe typical.
Sure.
But again, it's not like the Emily Ruto of LSU, or it's not like the Sullivan Kipchoge of Texas Tech. It's not like those guys are 28-year-old freshmen, right? That's not what's happening, at least with this kind of demographic in this field. And here's a fun game I want to play with you. The final sub 430 mark in the NCAA right now sits at 429.86.
Yeah.
Where on the national leaderboard does that sit? Do you know?
Oh, I do know. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah,
I was looking at that. I'll turn this around. Where do you think that mark will sit when we get to NC, like right before NCAA's? What it'd be is, for context, that is 20th, and that's Silan McCabe. Where do you think she's going to be if she keeps that mark of 429.86 by the end of the
So
season?
right now, Tifers is kind of freaking out. It's not showing the top 4 women on the national leaderboard, but I guess that would be so Ayyildiz, Hartman,
Riggins
um,
and Appleton.
Riggins, and Appleton. Okay, that's that. It's those 4. I think all 4 of those women run the mile. I think Pellicoro. Maybe what does Pellicoro do now?
Yeah, I
If you
don't
were
know.
Pellicoro, she just ran too flat in the 800. So what do you do now if you're Pellicoro?
I think you still stick in the mile because I think that's a better event for her than the 800. And while the mile is probably deeper, I mean, you think about who you're going up against in the 800. You're going up against an Olympian who's won this title like before. If you're trying to be an All American, you do 800. If you're trying to actually contend for a win, I think you do mile.
Interesting. Good take. I like that take. I think so. I think Pellicaro probably scratches if I had to guess. I think Chamberlain scratches, and I think Bunnage scratches.
Yeah, Bunich will.
After that, so that's 3 names who scratch from, and I don't know where the 16th runner is now.
I think
They don't have
that
the
would be Alder.
No, Alder's a little bit further down. They just don't have it. The Tifers is all kind of messed up right now.
Yeah, okay.
But regardless, like I think you're basically not getting. I don't. I think sub 420 or sub. Sorry, I think sub 430 does not guarantee you a spot to the national meet
Yeah,
this year.
yeah, yeah. I think that's kind of the point I was getting at. Is yeah, because you look at like Bunnage is 429.09, like and like she's I at least from what I'm seeing 18th.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's crazy. Like it could be you could need to at least be almost a second under 430 to qualify this year, which is again I keep saying it. I think could be one of the best fields that we've seen in an NCAA championship.
Who had a better race? Was it Maggie Congdon running 427 in the mile to win the Husky Classic over Bunnage and Carlson, who each ran 429?
Mm-hmm.
Is it that string of like 426 milers, the Lorena Rangel Beatrice, Bethan Morley, Vera Sojberg, who each ran 426 when it would have just been a great, great day if they ran 429?
Sure.
Or is it Mina Scatcherd of Princeton upsetting Kaylee McCabe 428 to 429? Who had the better day?
Ooh, that's a good one. I I think I will go with Congdon just because she did beat. I mean, Bunnage has just been on a tear, right? And this isn't necessarily her event, but I think to do that pretty convincingly, and Carlson's been good this year too. And run 427. I think there's maybe more in there if she ran at BU, right? Where she was just kind of sitting in that pack and just being pulled along to a quicker time. I think that's the only thing that pulls me off of like that trio that ran 426 is they were just in a perfect setup. Now they still had to be super fit to be able to hang, right? They could have easily gotten dropped when you're coming through the 800 at that fast of a pace. So credit to them to be able to do it. I'm a little bit more curious to see what they can do in a more normal race that isn't quite a time trial perspective. And I think for Congdon, like we've seen her be super competitive at the NCAA level. So the fact that she's running 427 tells me that she's clearly fit enough to mix it up with the top of this group this year as well.
I'm going to move us off the mile because I feel like we could just go
Yeah,
on
we
and
can
on
talk
and on
forever.
about that. Let's go to the 800 men's side. Tinoda Matsatsa takes home a great win, just great across the board, simply outran a very strong field, ran 145.21. He now sits at NCAA number 3 all time. Is it safe to say that he is the sole clear national title favorite over 800 meters? And then B, if he is it unrealistic to say that he could get the NCAA record in the spring? which is I think 143.
Yeah, it was Brazier, right?
So yeah,
From his incredible season. I think he is definitely the clear favorite. We talked about this a week or two ago about you look at this field, it's not the most experienced group. There hasn't been anybody that's really stood out. But I think between like if you look at all of Matsatsa's performances so far this year, every one of them have been great. And he's clearly gone up a level in terms of his strength. You've seen that in the 1,000, you've seen that in the mile. He drops down to his main distance and runs something incredible, right? I do think 143 is like a year or so away from him. I think this is where he's clearly improving, but I think that would take a very big jump. And it's not like he's the like a Brazier Whitmarsh kind of guy who's super tall, where it's like, hey, you get off that indoor oval and your legs just open up on the
yep,
outdoor track
that's
and you
true.
drop a second just because of that. He's not going to get that same kind of benefit. So that's but I'm not ruling that out for him during his career. He's headed that way.
The record currently held at 143.25 by
Yeah.
Michael Cerrone,
Oh, Saruni,
which
that's
is now
right.
a problematic record.
Yeah, that
So,
is a problematic record.
um, so okay, new question. I agree. I don't think he runs 143.25. Does he break 144 on the outdoor oval?
No, no, not
Interesting.
not not there yet either.
Okay.
I do think he'll run like 144.2 or something. I don't know where you're
Yeah,
at with that.
I think you're right. I think he definitely runs 144.
Yeah.
He looked great. He's looked great, and I can't remember the last time I felt this good about a national title favorite at the men's 800 meters. It's been a bit. Even Yusuf Bizimana, like I remember, like I picked Navaski Anderson, and he almost got that too if it wasn't for the DQ. So it's been a while.
Do you think that's a product of him or the field more? Because it feels like a little bit of a weaker field than in years past.
It's uh, I want to say both, but I think it's only both if that field is not good. So,
Right.
which is such a tough way to put it. But yeah, I think it's probably the field, which is wild because, ladies and gentlemen, you want to talk about depth. Right now, the a 146.97, that is the final men's 800-meter mark this season that is under 147, sits at NCAA number 19. This race very rarely gets scratched from. Maybe
Yeah.
there'll be one or two, sometimes three. But right now, a sub 147 mark does not get you into the national meet. So I'm in agreement saying that I don't think this year's 800-meter field is all that like top heavy. I don't really see too
Yeah.
many threats to Matsatsa, but I also think that this is statistically the biggest, the most depth that we've ever seen in the event. Question: who is the biggest threat to Matsatsa right now?
I think it's Hassan,
Is
just
it?
because I think he's the only one that's proven that he can run at that level, and he has more experience than you look through the rest of this group. And I think that's like when we say we don't think it's a super great field, that's more because they just haven't proven themselves
Right.
at the national stage yet. Like we could be talking about this group in 2 years being like, oh my gosh, like this was the golden era of 800-meter running.
Yep.
Like these guys were competitive at US championships. A bunch of them have won NCAA titles, but right now, a lot of them are very unproven when it comes to the national stage. Even the guys that are older, right? Like a Smallwood, like a Reinheimer or Justin O'Toole, like guys who are newly elevated to this level. And I think so. So when you put that all together, I think Hassan's really the guy that sticks out to me. Has experience, has run under 146. I struggle to see anybody else being able to compete with Matsatsa.
Good take. I like that take a lot. Colin Sahlman, he ran
Yeah.
146.4 with a blistering kick to narrowly take down a very deep field of Justin O'Toole, Kyle Reinheimer, maybe two others who I'm not even thinking of right now. Solomon has now run 146. He's run 352 and he's run 740.
Yeah.
Outstanding range. What does he run at the national meet?
Man.
This is a tough one.
You can make a pretty compelling argument for all of them.
Yep. Yeah, okay, let me put it this
I
way.
almost go
Is
ahead.
it,
Yeah.
is it the mile 3K double, or is it just the 800? Because the 800, if you want to be an All-American, he
Yeah.
could realistically get third, I think, and no one would be surprised.
Yeah, and I think that's where I was going. If you want to maximize what you can get points-wise this season, I think it's the 800. If he wants to set himself up, and I'm sure I don't know this for a fact, but I believe he probably sees himself more as a miler,
Yeah.
and would want to run what he feels like is his main event, and maybe set himself up for, hey, he doesn't score as many points at NCAA's, but he gets the experience. He's ready to go for outdoors, next indoor season, all that. So I think I would recommend doing the 800, but I think if he wants to get the experience of the mile, I wouldn't fault him for that reasoning.
All right, that's enough of the 800 for the men right now. So moving on, let's actually talk about 800 women. I'm going to briefly skip that one
Sure.
bullet point
Yeah.
we have just for now. Juliette Whittaker, 159 to take down Laura Pellicaro, who ran 2 flat at the Husky Classic. And then Sanu Jallow on her home track in Arkansas, 159 as well. For Whittaker, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I don't really think we have a whole lot to talk about.
No, we don't.
We kind of already spoke about Pellicaro and what she could do. I think the bigger story here is now Sanu Jallow, who has now run her second sub 2 mark in the 800 meters.
Yep.
This time it's on an indoor track, a 200-meter indoor track. Are you willing to put Sanu Jallow now in the same tier as Whittaker, Willis, and Rose?
Not yet.
Ooh.
I think, again, it's not because I don't think she isn't as talented as that group, but when you look at that group, they have been the best in the NCAA for the last couple of years, winning titles and just proving that they can show up at the national meet and execute their race plan. I think Jallow is if you're again talking about someone that you would line up for a time trial, is she in that tier? Absolutely.
Yep.
Like no doubt. Talent wise, 100%. I am kind of in a believe it when I see it stage with her, not because I don't think she can, but because those 3 women have done it, and I just have such a high confidence level in them that it's almost like one of them has to drop off, or Jallow has to go up even another level for me to feel like she's going to be right there with them when it comes to the national stage.
I would have jumped to this as an easy answer like you as well and said no. Then I remembered that she was an Olympian for Gambia.
She was.
Gambia, and like
Yep.
I can't kind of like shake that from my head and be like, man, that's really good experience.
Yep.
So I think I have no arguments to argue against you. I think in the article, I think I was kind of hinting at like saying Jallow is there. Okay, how about this? Is there any D1 woman in the women's 800 right now that is on the same tier as Jallow, right? So if it's Rose, if it's Whittaker, and if it's Willis in that top tier, and the next tier is Jallow, is there anyone else in that same tier with her over 800 meters?
No, I think she's on her own. Honestly, I think you can make a case that Willis and her are almost in a tier by themselves, and then you would put Whittaker and Rose in that top 2 tier, just because with Willis, we haven't quite seen her firing at her best for a little bit now. I mean, again, she just ran 2:01. It's not like she's running poorly. It's just we haven't seen her at what she was her freshman year, where she was winning NCAA title. But yeah, I think Jallow is kind of in her very specific tier, because she's just clearly proven that she has more talent than almost anybody in the NCAA, but hasn't proven to be able to translate that to a national title yet.
At Boston, Michaela Rose of LSU, Sophia Gorierin of Harvard, and Wilma Nielsen of Oregon, pretty much all across the line together at 2:01. Rose gets the very, very, very narrow win. In a post-race interview with FlowTrack, she says, like some workouts haven't gone quite my way. I've had to fight off a couple of small injuries here or there. It seems like she's saying that she has not been completely at 100%, not in A+ form. But she says, I think I'm exactly where I need to be. I'm not too worried. I should be good to go. Where is your concern level with Rose after A, seeing that race that she just had, and then B, hearing those comments that I don't think were maybe intended to be, raise the alarms, but also make you think a little bit? Where's your concern level on a scale of 1 to 10?
I think it's pretty low. I'll put it at a 4, and I say that just because normally she loses this kind of race, and despite her fitness maybe not being quite at her peak level, that was never really the problem, right? Like when she was losing to the in NCAA championships, it wasn't because she couldn't run like a 158, 159. Like it was because she just wasn't executing a race plan to go up against Whittaker, which we've seen time and time again is very difficult to do.
Yep.
But I like that she was able to take down Gorier and Nielsen, who are both having really good seasons. And I mean, I know it was a very narrow victory, but again, those are the kind of races we normally see her lose. We've seen her win races by a second or two where she just pulls away from the field, no one can hang. We haven't really seen a lot of victories like this. So this makes me feel a little bit better about her, while acknowledging she still needs to improve that fitness a little bit more before NCAAs.
Dude, you're on fire today. I completely agree. You're like just, take after take. I'm like, yeah, that's 100% true. I completely agree. All right, I'm moving us off of the women's 800. Yassine Abdallah, 13:09 for the 5K in the same race that Grant Fisher broke the world record in. Go check out the interview on our YouTube page, both with Yassine and Grant, actually. Do we need to go into this?
No, it's good performance. We could kind of see this coming after his double in December, and yeah, he's just clearly gone up at a level from last year. He's been consistent and has a higher top end than I think we ever thought he'd be able to reach.
No notes. No notes. Let's talk about the women's 3K though, which had an unreal weekend. I would argue maybe not the mile, but it's pretty close to the mile in terms of the caliber that it's at this year. Husky Classic, we saw Lexi Halladay-Lowry and Riley Chamberlain, both of BYU, run 8:40 to defeat Elise Stearns of NAU, who ran 8:41, who finished ahead of Stanford's Sophia Kennedy, who ran 8:42, and in that same race, Amina Matug ran 8:46. Nice to see her getting back into top form. How what do we do with this? Is this like, do we look at Lexi Halladay-Lowry now and Chamberlain as national title favorites? Do we have to? Is that like what?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I've always been super high on both of them. I think Halladay-Lowry is the better runner. But I do think you can make a compelling argument that Chamberlain is more of a title threat in the 3K. With her speed, like she's just been on a tear, really. I mean, you go back to, honestly, her last like race or two during the cross-country season. She's been awesome. And we've seen what she can do at the end of races. We saw that last year. I think it was last year in the DMR with her anchor close was fantastic. If she's around with a couple laps to go in the 3K, you line up this group. Is there anyone you trust more with a kick? Like, I don't think so. I think you could say, hey, Lemngole might be able to run away, or Bunnage might be able to run away from her.
Flockhart or May. I mean,
yeah, Flockhart. That's
well, they would probably be doubling.
But yeah, they won't be. They almost certainly won't be fresh. Unless they do DMR 3K double, which is what I imagine Chamberlain's going to do. I think she has to be considered one of the top tier names to win the title, and I think Halladay-Lowry, I think you could, to a lesser extent, could make a similar argument.
So for those wondering, and you know what, while we're at it, and I just want to throw this in there, Doris Lemngole runs 8:41 at Boston, narrowly loses a race to Lauren Ryan, Florida State alum, but runs 8:41 in the 3K. Thought it was actually a really well executed race. Thought she tried to not just sit and kick on 200 meters to go, but tried to push from a little further out and try to drop her competition. I liked it a lot. So let's throw the 8:41 in there. As of right now on the national leaderboard, do you know the number for this?
I'm looking, but okay. You tell. I'm not. I haven't scrolled too far down, so you could keep going. You could keep going.
Okay. Right now, it's, and this is odd because I'm seeing 15, even though it's skipping numbers. There's like, I don't see a number 4 in there. There's
You
no,
need to
like,
refresh your T-verse.
I did. I did. I don't know what's going on. So right now I see Peyton Noe as the last collegian in a sub 850 mark. Is that correct?
No, I have Jesse Sikor at
A Sikor-
850 as at 16th.
No, I know, but like I'm saying,
Oh,
is no
oh,
Noe the last? I think it's Peyton Noe actually.
yeah.
Is Noe the last sub 850 runner?
Yes, yeah.
So 15 women have run under 850 this year for 3K.
And she's at 847. Like, it's not like she's just barely under 850. She is at 847. Yeah, I mean, it's going to take. Yeah, I don't know. At least sub 850. It could be at 847 to qualify.
Okay, what is more impressive, that there are 20 women who have run under 430, or that there are 16 women who have run 847 or faster in a 3K?
I think the 30. The 30 is just, that's such a big number, and I mean, obviously if you ran under 850, that was an incredible performance, again, with something that we would lead with in years past. 430, not quite to that same extent, but we were taught, like, that was up there on the rundown if we saw someone had run 428, 429.
I was going back and looking at prior years and T-first marks and seeing like 440 got you into the national meet.
Oh my gosh.
I'm not even kidding. It was crazy. In terms of behind the BYU duo at the Husky Classic, you had Stearns in 841, Kennedy in 842. Stearns, I think this is a surprising result. I don't think we expected her to have this kind of turnover. She's predominantly been a 5K cross-country specialist. This is easily the best mark on her resume. It's not close. I now have to wonder, like, what is her role in the All-American conversation? Is she going to be the aggressor? I don't know how she executes. I'll be really curious. It's very rare that you see an accomplished veteran post this kind of time, and we still don't really know much about how she'll execute it. Sophia Kennedy, though, from Stanford, runs 842. Question: who gets a national title first, Sophia Kennedy or Amy Bunnage?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think Bunnage still, just because I think she's knocking on the door already. I think you can make a interesting argument of who wins the most. I think out of the two of them, Kennedy having. Well, I think do they both have the same amount of eligibility?
They're both sophomores.
Okay,
they're both sophomores.
But it feels like Kennedy's been improving a little bit more year over year, and I mean, honestly, Bunnage doesn't have. It seems like I'm sure she'll keep continuing improving, but it doesn't seem like she has that much more to go. Right? She's already at near the pinnacle. And
so who do you take for the next 2 years? If you're like, I need to build my roster for the next 2 years, and you're like left with these two, who do you take?
I think you have to go Bunnage, just because you know there's probably a higher floor because she's already at a higher level. But I don't think it's as cut and dry as people would think if you just looked at their resumes. Because if you look at their resumes, it's like, oh yeah, Bunnage, no problem. Just because of the times that she's run, what she's done at NCAA cross country performances. But Kennedy's coming strong. Like, she's going to that's going to be a powerful 1-2 punch next fall.
Agreed. Moving off of that, making sure I didn't skip anything and did not. Men's 3K at Husky Classic. I can't believe I'm saying that a win from Hopton Samuel over Nico Young. Samuel running 7:39. Not really a stunning result. It's a great result, but not really. There's a whole lot to talk about there.
The only thing I'll say quickly on that race is there's so many people who ran fast times there. Don't read into like if someone finished 7th in that race, because it was such a congested group of athletes. Like, I think you run that race 10 times, that order could get jumbled up in a lot of different ways. I think it's really a good sign for Samuel that he beat a lot of these guys who have pretty good kicks. But I think you look at all those guys and you can be like, oh man, I think they all could be very competitive at the national stage.
Relative to expectations, who had the best day of that group?
Acer Iverson.
Yep. There we go.
running 7:41. That he's the one guy on that list. You're like, oh wow, that wasn't expecting you to be in this group, but yeah, good for him.
What's more surprising, Acer Iverson running 7:41, or at the BU meet, the Valentine Invite, seeing Colton Sands and Luke Tewalt run 7:39 for 3,000 meters behind Romain Legendre, shattered the D2 record in 7:36, easily won. He's elite. But from a D1 perspective, Sands and Tewalt running 7:39. What was more surprising?
I think Sands. This we've seen Iverson be at a pretty high level, like in the 5K before. Running this fast in the 3K is a big surprise. This Colin Sands performance is like just out of nowhere. He just skipped over a couple tiers from where he's been historically. This was a paradigm shifting performance for him. It's something that you have to look at him completely differently now than we did before this weekend. And T-Walt, again, he's shown flashes of this. This is, I think, his best performance that we've seen to date. But we've seen him run very well on the mile, the 5K, the 15. Like he's an impressive talent. For him to put it together isn't stunning. It's just stunning how quick he was able to
run. Is Coach Miltenberg the Coach of the Year front runner right now? Coach of the season, I should say, for our end of season awards.
I think so, right? I mean, you have 3 guys who have run sub 740. You have a 348 miler. You have 2 730 3K guys. It's not the most depth in the world, but when you have that level of top end talent, I think I'm trying to go through the list here of who even else would be in that conversation.
I think Villanova, Marcus O'Sullivan.
Yeah. You could maybe put Powell. Yeah, that Powell is the other one. Yeah, I mean, on the women's side, it's pretty clearly Diljeet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Miltenberg is probably the front runner right now.
Well, I mean, 3 guys under 740.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Did you ever think that we would come to a day when we started this podcast?
No.
Did you ever think that we would ever be alive for a season where 3 guys would run under 740 for 3,000 meters in the same season? Did you ever think we'd be alive for that?
I never thought we would be talking about NCAA performances on world record lists. Like, no one's run a world record, but they're top 10, the top 15. Like, yeah. I just didn't ever think that we would see that day, and we're hurtling towards even more of those.
We're getting old, Ben. Yeah. We're getting really old. All right, I'm moving off of that. Shout out George Cootie. I said he was going to be a great 3K runner. He ran 740. My guy, go Hokies. All right. Women, DMR. Yes. BYU runs 10:37 in the DMR, the BYU women, to beat out Stanford, who ran 10:38, NAU 10:39, Washington 10:40, and Utah 10:42. What is your biggest takeaway from this race? And I should know just real quick, 10:37 is the fastest time ever run in the women's indoor DMR. It is not technically the record because it was run on an oversized track. And yes, Harvard did run a faster outdoor DMR at last year's Penn Relays. That's why it's not the all-around season record. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this group and you look at the lineups they ran, it isn't really that surprising with the exception of Utah. Like, Utah's performance was incredible. NAU, I think you look at what having like Agus McTee in there and setting themselves up to be able to still run 10:39 with, I mean, you have Carlson and Congdon to anchor. Not surprising that they would still run fast. But yeah, I mean, you look at these lineups and it's like, yeah, of course they're going to run something insanely quick. Who's your favorite and to win the DMR? And this is, hey, you're expecting what the lineups that you're expecting them to run at NCAA. So not if like everybody was running their best athletes, but based off of who you expect to be running, like whatever you think. If Providence runs both of their women, if BYU runs this kind of lineup, who do you think is the favorite to win the DMR?
Oregon.
Yeah. What do you think they're going to run? Who do you think they're going to run?
I think they run Mia Barnett because I don't think she
Yes,
qualifies, which is an insane thing to say out loud. Um, I guess Elmore's not racing this winter. I don't think we've seen her,
it
right?
doesn't seem like she is. No,
No. I don't think they would jeopardize Ayyildiz coming back,
I agree.
right?
I agree.
Do they? What about Nielsen? Like, I think. Okay, how about this? Give me this. I think one of Nielsen and or Ayyildiz comes back. At least one of the two.
Do you think they would anchor? Do you think they would, or do you think they
I
would
think
run
they
the?
lead off.
Or they would lead off. Yeah. Okay. And
I think
then,
they
so
lead off
you're saying Barnett would be their anchor more than likely?
probably because I think it makes the most sense. I don't. I'm not confident that she's going to qualify. Is in the next couple of weeks, especially with the last chance
Right.
meets, good chance
He's
that
gonna have to
she
run
she
something
gets bumped
faster.
off.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the 800 set. The 800 is the only challenge. It's a leg that you can get by and not have to be totally invested in, but
You need to be competent.
yeah, you need to be, that's a good yeah. You need to be competent. So um,
I
yeah,
I think I'm with BYU just because I think
yeah.
Chamberlain's going to be the best anchor leg, and I
So you
struggle
think
to
she's
think they're.
scratching for the mile?
Yeah. I think she'll do mile 3 or DMR 3K like she did last year.
Mm, mm,
I mean, you run 840 in the 3K. I think you feel pretty good about setting yourself up to be competitive in that,
yeah,
especially in a mile field that's that deep.
you've convinced me because even if they don't have Hunter in that DMR,
You
they're
don't need
almost
her.
certainly going to have Alder, and it would make more sense if Chamberlain did the DMR 3K again like she did last year.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I'm with you. I think I take it back. I do think it's going to be BYU. I lied.
Yeah, it's a crazy. It's going to. We've seen these DMRs though throws curveballs, right? I remember Stanford winning a couple years back. That kind of came out of nowhere. That what Willis and Whittaker were able to double back from their 800 prelims and do something crazy. So we could be surprised in Providence depending on what they do. Like I would anticipate we're not going to see May and Flockhart both run it fresh, but if they do, they could go. Then that's a conversation, right? They could have the best anchor leg in the field, and that's something that again holds so much weight with these teams that are all bunched together. Let's move
Uh,
on to the men's DMR, and we can go Washington 9-14 NCAA record. I do like. Well,
technically
yes,
not the
okay,
NCAA or its
fastest time
oversized.
ever. Yes,
Fastest time ever.
I don't like it's.
Listen, we have to play by the
Yes,
rules.
you're
Okay.
right. You're right. You're right. I don't like it, but you're right. And but again, what would you expect them to run with the amount of depth that we've seen them have in the mile? For them to run 9:14, it's the least surprising fastest ever performance that I think we've ever seen.
Yeah, and for the record, it's not just fastest ever performance in the NCAA; it's a world record apparently. Because if you so
Yeah, you're
it
probably
did
right.
beat the Brooks Beast mark by like this much, barely. And I looked up on their roster; they're all Americans,
Yeah,
so
that's
it
what I was gonna
does
ask.
technically qualify as a world record, which
Wow.
is I think overlooked. The problem with this is that none of these guys like this is not going to be the lineup that they field at the national meet. There is zero chance
No.
that Nathan Green gives up individual glory in the mile to be fresh just for this. Um, I mean, Reinheimer and O'Toole, like those guys are probably going to be, running the Open 800, and I think they've deserved to run the Open 800. McMahon Staggs has run 351 in the mile. It'd be weird if he didn't run the mile,
Right.
right? And I just think there's way too many weapons that they have outside of this crew in the sub 356 range. Like Cole Lindhorst could be a perfect guy for this relay.
Yeah.
Acer Iverson's run 356. Thomas Diamond could run something pretty quick, and so on and so forth. So um, I think it's a great lineup. Here's the unofficial splits according to Washington: 250 for Ronan McMahon Staggs, 46.8 for Bodie on the 400-meter leg. Reinheimer is 146.57 for 800 meters, and Green split 350.15 on the anchor. Quick.
Oh, and like by himself, right? In the
Oh
anchor
yeah, he
leg.
was. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, he was completely
gosh.
solo, which is very,
That's
very
that's
impressive.
ridiculous. Oh, yeah,
Um,
he's gonna run 3:48. He's gonna yeah, we're gonna have another one. Like if he runs the mile
do
again,
you think if he runs the mile at a last chance meet, do you think he runs 348?
I think so. If you can run 350 by yourself, you can run 348.
I like these. This is spicy takes. This is good. All right, moving off of that. Lucy Jenks, 15:15, top collegian in the 5K at Boston Valentine Invite. Is she an All-American in your eyes?
She's been so much better than I think, and you were really high on her coming to Georgetown, but I think she's exceeded all expectations since she's come. She's been a very productive part of their cross country lineup, and then has been awesome on the track. So she's 7th on the performance list, and you look at the women in front of her. It's Hartman, Bunnage, Kosgei, Halladay-Lowry, Olmame, and Lemngole. You don't love her chances to beat any of those women. Assuming
Hartman
all those
doesn't
women
run that, right?
Yeah. Probably not.
Why would Hartman run this 5K?
Probably not. Yeah, that's right. So you're looking at, and then behind her you have Chloe Thomas, Elise Stearns, Millard, Scrimger. She just beat. I think she's considered a favorite at this point to be an All-American, but just barely. It is.
Yeah, she's right on the
skin
line.
of her teeth.
Yeah, she's right on the line. I agree, because that top of the 5K field, that's not moving. Like, that's going to be that's going to be the top 5. Assuming they all run it, and they probably will, and it's not going to be a question. So, okay, moving off of that. Evans Karui of Washington State, 13:17. Do we have any notes here?
Good run.
Okay. Villanova's Dan Watcke, after running 146 for 800 meters, just ran 217 for 1,000 meters at Boston, NCAA number 3 all time. Is he an 800-meter All-American favorite? And what does he need to do to be a lock?
So I really am struggling to put many people in like the lock category right now, because I just, again, don't feel like I don't think I have a good feel.
But what does he need to do? If he can.
I mean, I think if he runs 145, that would. If he beats a couple of the guys that are like around him, that 146 range, I think you could. If he takes home a convincing win against a group of these guys that are in this All-American contender status, I think you could put him in there. But again, like, because he's going to be going through rounds, and that's a difficult experience in your first indoor nationals. Again, I like him a lot. I think he's going to be great. I think he's going to be really, really good. He actually, fun fact, he went to the same high school as all my brother-in-laws. So they got a front row seat to him being awesome.
Oh, that's right, because he's an Illinois guy, right?
Yeah, he went to Hinsdale Central.
That's right.
And they got a lot of really good runners come through there. But yeah, the inexperience worries me. The talent doesn't at all. Like, he's going to be a multi-time All-American.
I think this is a year where talent can supersede experience. And for that reason, I'm not going to say he's a lock, just because I need to see something a little bit more. If he's able to like be competitive, I'm not saying he should be, beating Matsatsa or anything, but if he can at least like be competitive with him at the Big East Championships, like, I think that's a great sign for me in saying like, okay, maybe he is a lock. But right now I think he's a clear All-American favorite, and I feel really good about that, mainly because the rest of the field is just as inexperienced in these specific instances as he is. So I agree with you there. Wrapping it up with a trio of 352 milers, all at different meets. Cal Poly's Aidan McCarthy, Boston College's Stephen Jackson, Princeton's Harrison Witt, all run 352 each. McCarthy ran it at the Husky Classic. I think he finished outside the top 5, but he was the top Collegian. Jackson secured a very, very, very narrow win over Sam Tanner to take the win at the Eagle Elite Invite. And Witt ran his 352 mark in the second heat at the Valentine Invite to take the overall win. Which of these performances did you feel was more important for each of these guys' All-American case?
Yeah, I think it's Witt, just because I don't think he had any case before this. I think McCarthy, you could have put together some kind of compelling argument, right? That based off his experience, he's run some good 800s. He's put together some good performances this year. 352 is an awesome performance, though. That again puts him a leg up. And Steven Jackson, I was on the map in a little bit more of a way than Witt, but not like as much as McCarthy. So this I think he's second in terms of improving his odds. But yeah, it's Witt. Like, unless you are really following along like the regional performances during the outdoor season, you're not going to know Harrison Witt. You're going to know Steve. You probably already know.
He was a top high schooler, a top recruit.
That's fair. Yeah, you're tracking high school, but like otherwise, you're not seeing his name on performance lists or at national championships, and like you were with maybe these other two guys, and for him to dominate that heat. That saw a lot of guys run, I think, under 356. Really, really impressive. Again, we've talked about this before. We need to see the consistency, this breakout performance. You need to follow that up. But he's clearly put himself in a different class of than he was before, and he's going to be at the national meet now, which I think is exciting experience for him at the very least.
You've convinced me. I was going to say Jackson, and then you're like, well, Witt didn't even have an argument. I was like, yeah, actually, that's a really good point. Yeah, I agree. Witt. No notes. And with that, we are all done. But I do want to point this out there. At the beginning of the season, you and I both said the NCAA mile record will fall.
Yep.
With the men's and women's side. And this past weekend, that was completed. I'm just saying, this is why you listen to the Stride Report, the Blue Oval podcast. I know it was kind of like an absurd take. Both of those records have fallen. Just saying.
And we have relegated 352 mile performances to the end of the podcast.
Oh man, isn't that wild?
This is where we're at. This is where we're at. It makes me feel slow, old, a lot of things.
Oh, it makes me feel sad. Yeah. Real quick, I want to just try to figure this out here. So the number 16 time, which is a tie right now with Matsatsa, who won't run the mile.
Yeah, no.
So it's Taha every way. 354.15. How, like, as you look at the national leaderboard right now, how deep down after scratches does that cutoff time go?
So we could see, let's see, 1, 2. I mean, right now I feel like it's at 19 or 20. I don't see a ton of scratches in here.
Yeah, I don't see a ton either. I think it's. Do you think Strand or Green? I'm sorry. Do you think Strand or Martin scratch?
No.
And then in that case, if you think Sahlman's running the mile, which I think we have good reason to, I don't know if there is a scratch, period. Matsatsa, who's tied for the 16th spot. But if you're a believer that Sahlman's not running the 800 or 3K, or he's not trying to be fresh for the 3K, and if you think that both Martin and Strand are both going to run the mile,
the only other person that I would say, and this is dependent on him running a 5K, is Colin Kiprotich. If he tries to do a 5K, 3K double, but he needs to run a 5K, which I think he could probably run at one fast enough. It's just whether or not they decide to put him in there.
But right now we see no scratches for the men's mile.
No, I mean, I think Sahlman is the closest one out of that group. Yeah.
That's insane. So, all right. Well, Ben, nice work. I thought that was a very effective conversation. If you guys also thought that was an effective conversation, leave us a rating review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We would sincerely appreciate it. Go subscribe on YouTube. We had a few more interviews up there as well. Grant Fisher, Yassine Abdallah, Harrison Witt, Romain Legendre, Doris Lemngole, and who else? Oh, Silan Ayyildiz, of course. So go check that out. And I think that's all I got.
All right. Well, until next week, when I'm sure we're going to have so many reviews, so many ratings to talk about.
Yes.
I'll talk to you then.
I'll talk to you.